It's 11:59 at Gun Owners Radio, and this is the Penn Patriot, music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, and another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind American lines, this is your song.
Gun Owners Radio. We make activism easy. Everybody, is June the 1st, 2025. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for listening to Gun Owners Radio. We are so happy that you are with us. Why do we do Gun Owners Radio? Well, it's a good question. We want to make change happen. We want to restore and preserve our Second Amendment rights in our lifetime. And we're doing a great job, and we're doing our part. We just need your help. So, fortunately, help's super easy. All you got to do is subscribe to Gun Owners Radio if you're not already. Just go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gun Owners Radio, and subscribe. It's totally free. And now let's get to the show.
I hope you are ready. We have a great show for you today. Grant and Sean from the News 2A crew. We're going to talk about some local San Diego Second Amendment issues, and we're going to cover some of the lawsuits that you need to know about. We bring you Gun Owners Radio from our Discount Gun Mart studio. Haven't been to DGM in a while? Check them out today and check out their website at discountgunmart.com. While you are on the internet, go over to our website at gunownersradio.com and sign up to get our emails so that you know what's happening in the Second Amendment community.
Awesome job. Alicia is not with us today, but Dakota is. Alicia is she's a little under the weather, so we're hoping for the best for her. So get well soon, Alicia. She'll be back very, very soon. So there's something about you guys never come on the same day. There's something.
I know. It keeps happening this way.
I know.
Last week I wasn't here because I had the golf tournament that I run once a year, and before that I was traveling and she was traveling. It's been back and forth.
It's good. I guess it's good. It's good that you're. It's good that you're not both gone on the same day, I guess. It's good that you guys coordinate days off or whatever. You guys are both like, look, I can't take Mike 2 weeks in a row, so we're just going to alternate. So I was reading an article before we get into it. I was reading a couple different articles. I read a bunch to get ready for the show.
Yeah, of course.
What do we want to talk about? What articles do we want to talk about? And it's driving me nuts. I saw the term "begs the question" misused like 100 times. And
I might misuse that.
You might misuse
Educate
it?
me. Let's see if I know how to use it properly.
That's what we're going to do. We're actually diving into a very common phrase in the English language that's very often misused. So, and I think it's also misunderstood, and that is begs the question. The term actually pops up in conversation a lot. It pops up in debates and writing and all over the place. But its true meaning is frequently confused with a very different expression. So I wanted to clear things up. I wanted to go with a very straightforward explanation that also ties into the Second Amendment. The phrase begs the question actually originates from logic and philosophy, and specifically from argument and debate, from that whole field. It's got a very specific meaning. It refers to a logical fallacy where an argument assumes the truth of its conclusion without providing evidence. So what does that mean? Well, in other words, what it means is it's when someone makes a claim that sneakily assumes the very thing that they're trying to prove. It's kind of a circular argument. So what's an example? So an example is if someone says, this book is the best because it's the greatest. That's a very elementary example, right? But if you say, well, this book's the best, and it's the best, well, it's because it's the greatest. It's one of the greatest novels ever written, and that's why it's the best. Well, you haven't actually proven anything, It doesn't actually, saying it's the best because it's the best isn't actually proving that it is in fact the best. And in that scenario, they are begging the question. So why? Well, like I said, it can't be the best because it's the best. Just because it's generally considered the best, and that's what makes it the best, isn't that why it's the best? Okay, so is
it begging a specific question, or is it saying that by doing that circular reasoning thing, they have begged the question?
So the question in that scenario is, what book is the best.
Okay.
So if you say this book is the best because it's considered the best, you are now begging the question.
I see.
So, and that's where people get confused, and we'll get into that in just a minute.
Okay.
But I want the second.
I'll sit tight.
Yeah, sit tight. I know you're on the edge of the seat with this lecture on the English language. I promise it's Second Amendment related. So the Second Amendment example would be that the Second Amendment guarantees an individual right to own any type of firearm anywhere because the Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms. Right? It's kind of a circular argument. You know, the argument is begging the question. You're not making the case that, hey, the Second Amendment, you know, is important because it helps us defend ourselves, and therefore the Second Amendment is one of the most important protections of our rights. You know, you're just saying, well, we have the right to keep and bear arms because of the Second Amendment says we have the right to keep and bear arms, right? You're begging the question there. Now let me talk a little bit. Let me go a little bit further, because this is where it gets a little tricky. In everyday language, people often say begs the question when they're actually meaning to say it raises the question. You know, this raises the question, whatever that question is. It isn't an example of begs the question, because that has a very specific definition. They're actually raising a question. So, for example, someone might say the Padres' loss begs the question, why didn't they practice more? In that case, they're using the phrase to suggest that the situation naturally leads to a follow-up question. They're not actually begging the question. They're raising the question, why didn't they practice more? And that's not right. So when you say something begs the question, you're not pointing out that a question arises. You're highlighting a flaw in their reasoning where their conclusion is assumed from the very, very start. They're not actually proving what they're saying. They're just saying it's this way because I say it's this way, and that's why it's this way, and that's begging the question. So let's look at another example that I jotted down here. Saying that stealing is wrong. This is a little bit more of a sophisticated example, right? Saying that stealing is wrong because it's illegal begs the question. Stealing's not wrong because it's illegal. Stealing is wrong for a variety of moral reasons. There are a lot of reasons to say, hey, this is why stealing's wrong. It hurts people. It's against private property, whatever. There's a lot of different reasons to explain to somebody why stealing property is the wrong thing to do. And because it is wrong, we have made it illegal. Stealing isn't wrong because it's illegal. It is illegal because it's wrong. So to say that stealing's wrong because it's illegal, and that's why it's illegal because it's wrong, that's begging the question. You're just going in a circle. You're not actually making a point about morality or private property or stealing or anything. And I think why a lot of people get it wrong or misuse it is because begs sounds like you're asking or pleading for something, like a question, which of course makes sense. But because they've just decided that, hey, this phrase actually has a specific meaning, it's being misused. And it's an easy mistake to make in casual conversation. It's very, very, easy. But when you're in writing, especially when you're an author, and you're making the case, you should probably use it correctly. And this really isn't about me saying, hey, use the English language more correctly, What I'm saying is, and what my point is that, it's annoying, and I'm kind of a stickler for a couple. There's a couple things in the English language that I'm a big stickler for. I love Oxford commas, and when you misuse a cliche, I get all excited, and when people say begs the question when they mean raise the question, that's something that annoys me. But who cares what I think? Who cares what annoys me? That's, what's the point here? It's an important reminder, but it's not just a reminder to use the language correctly. But it's a reminder to explain your arguments more efficiently and more effectively. When you're talking about the Second Amendment, never use an argument or explanation that does not, in fact, beg the question. People naturally pick up on that. Even if they don't understand the term begs the question, even if they don't understand that that's what you're doing, if you well, hey, we have the Second Amendment, and that's why I can, have the right to keep and bear arms. I mean, it's just how it is. People naturally pick up on that, lack of logic or that fallacy or that circular argument. we naturally have the right to self-defense. Without the ability to actually defend ourselves, that right's completely and totally meaningless. The government standing in the way of us obtaining the most widely wanted and most effective self-defense tool ever, which is, of course, a gun, that's infringing on our self-defense. And that's an explanation for why the Second Amendment is important. That's why we have the right to keep and bear arms. Everyone's right to self-defense, it's crucial. It's natural. That natural right exists, and it's good for humanity. We've codified it in the most important government document that we have, the Constitution. And we did that by writing the Second Amendment. But with or without the Second Amendment, we have the right to self-defense. But without the Second Amendment, the government can and will block your ability to exercise that right. With the Second Amendment, the government will always be limited, and of course it's our responsibility to make sure it stays that way. But that's why it's important not just to not annoy me, but to use the term begs the question correctly, but then actually take the step further and not beg the question when it comes to the Second Amendment. So there. What do you think of that, Dakota?
I appreciated the language arts lesson. I think it's good to know. I definitely have been misusing that.
You're not alone.
Yeah, I didn't actually know it was a logical fallacy, which is interesting, and it makes sense the way you explained it. I think it's important for all of us to think about how are we making arguments. I see that particular Second Amendment one all the time. Second Amendment, protects our right to keep and bear arms because the Second Amendment says so. That's why it is so. I see that all the time. So it's a good reminder for everybody.
There you go. Yeah, I can carry a gun because of the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
Well, that begs the question. Quite literally begs the question.
Right.
That's exactly an example of begs the question.
Yeah.
So why is it important for you to to carry a gun? Well, self-defense and my natural right, et cetera, et cetera. So there you go. So use begs the question. Here's my homework for you. My call to action. Use the term begs the question correctly one time this week. And then
call someone out for having a bad logical, argument.
Well, I was going to say the big advantage is once you noticed how to, begs the question and you know how to use it, you're going to feel so much more superior when you see somebody misuse it and you get to kind of passive aggressively correct them. So it's a huge advantage. So there you go. That's my begs the question rant.
I think it's time for Gun Truth of the Week.
I think it is. Gun Truth of the Week.
Before we dive into that really quick, if you believe in what we're doing and you want to help us fight for the Second Amendment every single week, join the Pew Pew crew on YouTube. It's just a few bucks a month. You get exclusive perks, and it helps us keep the show growing strong. Hit that join button and become part of the fight. One of the other perks of membership is priority registration for events like the Masad Ayyub training coming in September, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later.
Okay, awesome. Pew Pew Club, thank you, Pew Pew Crew, thank you guys so much. Okay, so back in this is actually from 2016, the U.S. Department of Justice, they put out a piece called the National Sources of Law Enforcement Employment Data. This was, again, 2016, October of 2016. They said in that, let's see, the Citizen Self-Defense Act of 2001, introduced in the 107th Congress, explained that former Florida Attorney General Jim Smith told the Florida legislators that police responded to only 200,000 of the 700,000 calls for help in Dade County alone. So Dade County had about 700,000 calls for help, and cops could only respond to 200,000 of those.
That's crazy.
And that was just, that's just 5 minutes ago. It wasn't that long ago. This was an ancient history. They haven't made massive improvements. So, again, most effective self-defense tool ever invented, a firearm. Get a gun, get training, get a permit, and carry everywhere you possibly can. And that is your gun truth of the week. All right. Should we do some Q's and A's?
Yeah. I think we've got some answers for some
I think
people.
so too. Okay, this keeps coming up. You know what? It's going to keep coming up.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep talking about it because people keep asking me about it. There's a guy named John McCann who's very anti-Second Amendment. He's a Republican, and he's running against another anti-Second Amendment person down in the south of San Diego. They're running for District 1 in the County Board of Supervisors race, special election. The other anti-gunner quit. She just left. She got reelected and left. Her name is Nora Vargas, and she left. So now there's a special election. There's 2 anti-gunners running. I wish we had an option. I wish there was somebody running that we could back, but both of them are so horribly awful that we're saying don't vote for either of them. Withhold your vote. You know, the point of a campaign is to give you a reason to vote, and neither of them have done that. So I think that you should keep your vote precious and valuable by not giving them that vote, which would, whichever one wins, it would reaffirm that, hey, everything I said was right. Look at how many votes I got and I won. This is what people want. Or even if they don't win, even if they come close or, barely miss the mark, hey, gee, gosh, I only missed by a few percentage points. All I had to do was maybe get a couple more people in the door. Why would I change any of my views? But somebody brought up, they said, hey, you talked to last week or, I think it was last week, we talked about the criteria we use to endorse people, which is Second Amendment and then viability as a candidate, their character and their effectiveness. But then we've talked a few times on other issues that do not have to do with Second Amendment, like the fact that he raised taxes and he's very supportive of sanctuary cities, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't decide on him based on any of those other political stances. The reason that they came up in conversation or that they're being talked about is because so many Republicans have come to me and said, look, he's not good on the Second Amendment, but that's not the only issue. We're voting for him on other issues. And then it turns into me holding up a mirror and saying, okay, here are the other issues you claim to cherish and support, and he's horrible on all of those too. And oh, by the way, even if he says, "Oh no, I've changed on Second Amendment issues. Now I'm a good guy," we can't believe him because he lies about these other issues as well. So even though this isn't a Second Amendment issue, when we talk about what he's done with whatever taxes, the budget, whatever, even though it's not a Second Amendment issue, it speaks to his character. It speaks to his effectiveness. If we are supposed to believe him on, that he's now Mr. Second Amendment guy, which he hasn't been real vocal on, but some people have said, oh, no, he says he's okay on the Second Amendment now. We can't believe him because he says so many things that are incorrect across the board. So there really is no candidate in D1, period. Full stop. If you're in District 1 down in the South, withhold your vote. By no means should you say that, yes, his views on Second Amendment, they're okay. So he's going to get my vote anyway. You should absolutely withhold his vote. And hopefully, somebody's going to win. I get it. But you still have to wake up and look yourself in the mirror. And you still have to send a message to the candidate saying your views were wrong, So anyway, that's John McCann in South Bay in District 1. I don't know. What do you think about that? What do you think about the concept of withholding your vote, even though there's only 2 people on the ballot?
I've done that lots of times. I won't give somebody my vote if I don't at least believe that they are the clear winner between 2 bad options. And I think in this particular case, there is not a clear winner. They're both bad options. And there's, sometimes you hear people when we're talking about voting, they talk about, the better of 2 evils or something like that. Yeah. But in this case, I don't really think there is a better of 2 evils. I think they're both awful on Second Amendment policy. You can't trust, I think withholding a vote is an example of voting just in a different way, right? You're not voting for them to come into office, but by withholding your vote, you're sending a very clear message that even though you are you have the right to vote and all of that, that you felt so morally, abhorred to whatever it is that they believe in that you're not even willing to give them that check mark on the ballot, right? So I think it's a good practice that a lot of people probably don't use, or they I think a lot of folks don't vote for other reasons, right? They don't know enough about the candidates, or they don't make it to the polls, or whatever. Like, there's other reasons that I think we should try to overcome. I think way more people should be voting in general. But if we're thinking about a specific election where there's not a good option, I think withholding that vote purposefully and intentionally is a moral thing to do.
Yeah, and I will tell you with absolute certainty, I've seen it, I've heard it, I've been in the room when it happens. Win or lose, the candidates do look at how many votes they got. And
100%.
well, gee, I didn't get as many votes as I thought. Well,
why not?
Yeah, why not?
Maybe
Probably
it could
because of your
spur,
views.
maybe it could spur some self-reflection. What about my campaign did people not like? And
There you go.
I don't know.
Okay, next question is, how do I transport my gun if I don't have a CCW? I thought that was an interesting question.
Yeah,
I think
it's a great question.
It is a great question, but I think it was the fact that they added the CCW part at the end tells me that there's a bit of confusion there. Usually people just say, "Hey, how do I transport my gun?" And that's an excellent question, and that's kind of straightforward. But I wanted to take an extra step there because they said they don't have their CCW yet. So how do they even transport their gun? Well, I think that there's a little bit of I wanted to clarify exactly what a CCW does and doesn't do. So there's a law in California that basically says to transport a firearm, it has to be locked in a case. Most people would agree that a hard-sided case is better than a soft-sided case, but there is an argument to be made that a soft-sided case is okay. But the safest way, the best way, the most legal way would be to transport it unloaded, locked in a hard-sided case. You can transport ammunition with it. You can actually have magazines with it. But a lot of people say that even a best practice is to have them in a separate container. But it has to be locked and unloaded.
Yeah, and if you have a regular like 4-door sedan vehicle with a trunk, the trunk itself counts as a locked container. Yeah. So you could just throw your range bag into the trunk, close the trunk, and now that's a locked container. But if you have like an SUV or a Jeep or something like that doesn't have that separate kind of compartment of the vehicle, then you do need that hard-sided case or some sort of a range bag that you can lock. But also just a random note is that glove boxes or glove compartments do not count as a locked container. So the law actually states that trunks are okay, but it says specifically that other locked areas of the vehicle, like the center console, I believe, is listed, and the glove box are not acceptable locked containers.
There you go. A CCW exempts you from that law. That's all it does. A CCW doesn't give you special permission to do anything other than exempt you from that law, meaning that you can now transport a firearm loaded and concealed. That's all it does. It doesn't give you extra authority. It doesn't change the laws when it comes to lethal force, or brandishing or anything like that. All it does, it says, is it exempts you from that law that says, hey, it doesn't have to be unloaded. It doesn't have to be in a locked container. So if you don't have a CCW, you just put it in a locked container, unloaded, you should be good to go. If you do have a CCW, then you can carry it on you as long as it's concealed. But I felt it was important. I don't know. Do you agree that it was important? I felt it was important to clarify that in that question because they mentioned CCW.
Definitely. I think one piece of the CCW thing that's interesting is that in San Diego County, there's a specific allotted number of firearms that you can carry concealed at one time. Right? Our permits, the sheriff's department has like a section on our permits that says, I think it used to be 3, and now you can only have 2 concealed guns at a time. I might be wrong. We don't take my word on that. You
I'll be honest with you, I haven't run into that. I didn't know that. Is that in the agreement or where is that?
Yeah, that's on actually, I have it.
There's like an agreement that you have to sign when you get your CCW. Is that where it is?
There is, and I have one on my desktop. I could pull up really quick. Yeah.
So this isn't a law. This is a part of the agreement that you sign with the sheriff.
Your San Diego County Sheriff's Office.
Which is just kind of like the drinking thing. They basically say, hey, you're also agreeing not to have a drink. And this,
even though that's not technically
the
law. Yeah.
And it's been this agreement's been in place for forever. I have some questions on the agreement, frankly.
Yeah. So Penal Code Section 26200, so 26,200, apparently says that you cannot carry more than 2 firearms at one time under your CCW. And so that is number 11
that is a
on
lot.
the agreement that you sign with the sheriff's department. It's the 11th bullet point that they give you on that page that you sign. I actually haven't read that penal code, so let's see what it says. But I do think that you want to be a little bit careful about that, because if you have a range bag, let's say with like 6 guns because you're going to the range, even though your CCW technically exempts you from that transportation law, if you have more than 2 on you, that might actually not be exempt for those other 4. So I don't know, just something to look into.
I'm embarrassed to say I've never run across that section of the penal code. I haven't read that.
No, I hadn't either.
And I wonder if it was added with SB2. Do you remember knowing about that pre SB2?
No. So actually, I just, the only reason I knew about it is because I had just recently read the 11 bullet points on that second page of the sheriff's thing.
Right, because who reads that crap? Right?
Yeah. So I've read it before, but it was just fresh on my mind. I read it like 3 days ago. And so that when you started talking, I was like, oh, I just saw something about this. But the penal code 26200 talks about a whole bunch of things you can't do when you're carrying a gun. While carrying a firearm as authorized by a license issued pursuant to this chapter, a licensee shall not do any of the following. And it includes be in a place having a primary purpose of dispensing alcohol. It includes engage in an unjustified display of a deadly weapon, all sorts of things. It talks about failing to carry the license on your person.
Some of that's like one of those is SB2. The rest of that's been around for a while. But
I guess so, yeah. It looks like it was amended on January 1st, 2024, so that would be SB2.
So it's SB2. There are a lot of nice little landmines, little gifts, little crap sandwiches that SB2 has handed us. So maybe we'll go into that specific. Maybe we'll go into that penal code specifically next week. We'll actually go into it a little thoroughly.
The piece about the 2 guns is the very last bullet point of that section says, a licensee authorized to carry a firearm pursuant to this chapter shall not carry more than 2 firearms under the licensee's control at one time.
Gotcha. Okay, next, guys, we got a couple of questions this week. It's a good week for questions.
It is.
How do I get an FSC, which is a firearms safety card, right?
Certificate. Yeah.
So in California, the FSC most commonly, it stands for, like we just said, the Firearms Safety Certificate. It's a requirement for purchasing or acquiring a firearm. And what's the difference between purchasing and acquiring? Well, even if you inherit a gun or someone gifts you a gun, you still have to have this FSC. And that's it's mandated by California law. To obtain the FSC, you have to go past, it's a 30-question written test that's actually administered by the DOJ. But or a DOJ certified instructor, but any gun shop, I don't know a single gun shop out there that doesn't have the ability.
Yeah, most the gun shops will do them. There's a bunch of CCW instructors around in the county who have their DOJ instructor cert that do the tests. But I don't want you guys to be scared of it. It's not a hard test. There's study guides online. You can go read up on what kind of laws it might talk about. But generally, I think you don't even have to do that well on it. It's like
75%.
Yeah, 75%.
So a C.
You can
You
get
got to
some
get a
wrong.
C. Yeah. C's get degrees.
Yes.
Actually, we have the study guide. If you could,
cool.
There you go. There's the study guide. And if you could kind of page down, and I'm going to keep talking about it. So the test covers firearms safety, handling, and some California firearms laws. But like you said, Dakota, it's not tough. If you can, you read through this thing and you can fog a mirror, you can pretty much pass this thing. It's only $25, right? It's $25. Have you seen it anywhere else? Or I think it's actually mandated by state. I think it's $25 no matter where you go.
Yeah, I think they are either trying to change it or they just changed it where now there's a little bit more flexibility. It used to be there was like a cap, like you couldn't charge more than a certain amount, but I think they're trying to make it more expensive. So stay tuned. Maybe we'll talk about that too.
Yeah, talk about yet more good news. Okay, so it's valid for 5 years. You have to be 18. You have to have a California driver's license or California ID. Exemptions include retired police officers, military personnel, and a valid hunting license, but that is for long guns only.
Yeah.
If you have a valid hunting license, and you're purchasing a long gun, then you don't need the FSC. But if you're a retired cop or retired military personnel, then you don't have to worry about the FSC. You just have to prove that you're a retired cop or retired military personnel because, some people are a little more equal than others. Anyway, I digress. There's the study guide. That's the FSC. Last question this week is, what groups should I support? Well, I'm a little biased. I think you should support San Diego County gun owners, Inland Empire gun owners, and Orange County gun owners, and not Me CA, our 501c3 that supports our women's program. Of course, you should support them. And it's super easy. $10 a month, $100 per year is the basic membership, or just a straight donation is always appreciated. But above and beyond that, I got to tell you, there isn't a group out there I don't like. There isn't a Second Amendment group. There isn't a Second Amendment group out there that I would discourage you from joining. CGF, California Gun Rights Foundation, they do California-specific lawsuits. FPC does national lawsuits, and they've done a wonderful job. So, both those groups, CGF and FPC, deserve your support. NRA is, like we've talked about, they're coming around. They're making a very strong comeback. And I got to tell you, if you have no strong opinion and a very limited budget, and you can only, give $50 to one group or something like that, I think NRA. I think everybody should be a member of the NRA. They should kind of be the foundation, and if you only can give one donation, although if you're a gun owner, you can give more than $50 a year. I mean, it's pretty expensive to be a gun owner. So, but I think everyone should be a member of the NRA. They're kind of the do-it-all group, whether it's education or culture or whatever, legislation, lawsuits, they kind of do it all. CRPA, they do a lot of lawsuits here in California. Gun Owners of California and Gun Owners of America are kind of two organizations in one, or maybe one organization in two. Same founder and a lot of the same leadership. One just works at the California level, the other works nationally. And then the Second Amendment Foundation has been absolutely fantastic. We're pushing their gun rights policy conference in Salt Lake City. I hope you can attend. And I don't know, what do you think, Dakota? If someone said to you, what groups should that you be sure to support, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think you listed all the main ones for sure. If we're talking about like policy and stuff like that, Women for Gun Rights is doing a lot of cool stuff. They have, I believe, a leader in every state that kind of keeps an eye on what is going on in that state, and then they go to the Capitol. They lobby politicians. I think you just recently interviewed the California rep, which is Kim.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on her last name at the moment, but Southwell, thank you.
Southwell.
Kim Southwell. She comes out and shoots with us. She's awesome, and she's doing a lot of great stuff in California. But I know that they're doing a lot nationwide. And then A Girl and a Gun sometimes does like amicus briefs. They've done some political stuff. The National Shooting Sports Foundation is a great one to support as well. They do the +1 movement every year for getting new people to the range, introducing people who have never shot a gun to shooting, which we think of that as a little bit of a different bucket of Second Amendment support, but it's super important. If we're not getting youth involved in the Second Amendment, if we're not getting, children's programs where, kids are learning how to shoot, and we're not getting people who don't own guns interested in owning guns, it's hard for us to build, FPC and SAF and all these other organizations up. So it's kind of a twofold, a multi-prong option here. But I would say, support anything locally that's getting people involved in shooting who don't shoot or who don't know how to shoot, and then obviously all the ones who are actively doing lawsuits and things like that.
There you go.
Also super
and
important.
The reality is money is necessary. I when I first got into activism, I used to criticize, we don't need money, we just need passion, and that's simply not true. And none of the groups, I should say all the groups that we mentioned, if they had 5 times the money that they beg for every year, you have no idea what a different country would have, a different country and state, here in California or any other 50 states. It would be enormously different. And the reality is so few gun owners actually write a check. And another reality is the checks that we write aren't big enough.
Yep.
The other side has way more money than we do, even though we could absolutely outraise them tomorrow. and they use that money effectively. And, they hire more attorneys, they hire more people to organize, they hire more people to protest and write and do all the things it takes to win. And they outspend us by a huge margin. So, make this the year that you give. If it's for the first time, great, fantastic. Write a check to a couple of different organizations, and I know that they're going to do you proud. If you have been writing checks, then I encourage you to write even bigger checks. This is an expensive thing, and the Second Amendment is just that important. So, but this isn't high school. We don't have different factions. They're not the cool kids and the uncool kids. So we're all working together to do the same thing. So I highly encourage you to support every single group. So one really fun and easy way to support a group, CGF actually has a very cool sweepstakes going on in the month of June, which of course first day is today. They're doing a sweepstakes. If you make a donation to CGF, California Gun Rights Foundation, you could win a Kel-Tec KS7. CGF, California Gun Rights Foundation, the R is silent. They do a fantastic job and have been for decades now, filing lawsuits and supporting your Second Amendment rights, pushing back, being your voice. And, we interviewed their founder last week, Gene Hoffman, and they're just doing such a fantastic job. This sweepstakes runs from June 1st through June 30th, and everyone who makes a donation to California Gun Rights is entered to win a Kel-Tec KS7. So there you go. There's a fun and easy way to support an organization right there. Just go to their website, it's CaliforniaGunRightsFoundation.com.
Another fun and easy way to support an organization is the Pew Pew Crew.
There you go.
We have a Pew Pew Crew prize drawing, and we want to welcome our new Pew Pew Crew members. We've got WP, Postal Pony, Minty Pup, Rolla Oss, Robert Harper. And a big thank you to gun websites for sponsoring those members. If you're not yet part of our Pew Pew Crew, now's the time to join. Not only do you get exclusive perks like behind the scenes content and members only updates, but in another week, we're drawing a winner for something that you won't want to miss. A free CCW class with the gunsmith guy, Arthur Ryerson himself. That's right, you could get your concealed carry weapons class covered just by being a member of the Pew Pew Crew. It's that easy. So what are you waiting for? Become a Pew Pew Crew member today, and you might be the lucky one heading to class with the gunsmith guy. Head over to our YouTube page and hit that join button to enter. Good luck and stay safe out there.
So those are all guys. The reason they have weird names is those are all guys that watch the show
on YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube.
Okay,
Live.
I was like, what am I reading right now?
I think you even asked about postal. I don't know.
Is it Pinoy or Pony?
Well, Pinoy is Filipino, right? Is that if you're?
I think that's what it is.
That's what they're indicating.
Oh, postal
Panay
Pinoy.
Panay and Pinoy are male and female Filipino.
Okay.
Right? But it might be Postal Pony. Maybe it's a nod to the.
I was like, is this like a pony that goes crazy and kills people? Going postal.
I don't know. I think he's Filipino. Rich would know, right?
Yeah, I suspect.
You suspect he's Filipino. Now I want to talk about, what can you do? What are some things you can do? We want to make activism easy, and there's a couple of steps you can take. Number one is, we've talked about this, and I want you to mark your calendars. The 2025 Gun Rights Policy Conference, Second Amendment Foundation is having it in Utah. It is September 26th through the 28th. It is free, but of course you have to make your way there and find lodging. But I wanted to talk about some of the people that are going to be featured there. So, of course, number one is Alan Gottlieb from Second Amendment Foundation. You've seen him on the news. You've seen him talk a lot. He's been around for decades defending the Second Amendment. He's enormously approachable and a really great guy. Everybody would benefit from a short conversation with Alan Gottlieb at Gun Rights Policy Conference. Adam Kraut, of course, the executive director from Second Amendment Foundation. He'll be there talking, and he's very easy to access and talk to. Charlie Cook, our buddy from Riding Shotgun with Charlie. I know for a fact he'll be there because he and I are hanging out while we're up there. And then Guns and Gadgets will be there. He runs a fantastic channel. Very approachable guy, always an interesting conversation and lecture from him. So I highly recommend you go to saf.org/GRPC and register and attend this conference. You will definitely find it valuable. The next is tabletops and shooting socials. That's kind of our go-to when it comes to activism. If you're wondering what you can do to help, we have a website, especially in San Diego, sdcgo.org/volunteer. If you go to this website, you will see a number of ways to participate and volunteer. We have a lot of shooting socials. We have a lot of tabletops. Now, what is a shooting social? Well, a shooting social is where we find experienced volunteers who have taught people to shoot before. You don't have to be a licensed instructor, but you have to be knowledgeable enough to be able to show somebody how to shoot your gun safely, because it's a first-time shooting experience. It's not a 101 class even. It's like an intro to, and a lot of people, over 10,000 people have gone through this program with us. It's got an impeccable safety record, and your job is just to be there to help and show somebody how to shoot your firearm. All you got to do is bring your 9mm, bring your eyes and ears, and we'll handle the rest. They'll purchase ammo and get a safety briefing. You just get to do the fun part. But if you go on volunteer, if you go down sdcgo.org/volunteer, then you can pick an event and volunteer. The other are the tabletops, where you show up to a tabletop that's already been set up, and you just pass out information. Most of them are at gun shops, but some of them are at other locations, there's a veterans event that we're going to be at. But they're all fun, and we need more faces. We need more people to say, hey, I can take half a day or whatever on a Saturday and help the folks that are working so hard. But that is our volunteer webpage on our website. Intro to Off-Grid Comms. That's happening on July 26th. It's in El Cajon. It's at Cargo in El Cajon, and the price is $250. A lot of people ask if it's a ham radio class. It's not a ham radio class. It talks a lot about ham radios, and that's, of course, involved, but it's actually a class that teaches how to communicate without cell service, without internet, and without satellite service. It's using an off-the-shelf tool that's affordable and is commonly available. Ham radio is just one of the tools, and it's covered, but it's not just a ham radio class. This is an off-grid communication class. If everything falls apart, if the infrastructure goes, if we have an earthquake and you're left without internet, without electricity, without satellite service, without cell service, what do you do? Well, we're going to show you in this class. Hopefully that makes sense. You can sign up for it on gunownersradio.com. And then, Dakota, you have an event coming up, don't you?
Yeah, the A Girl and a Gun chapter in San Diego, we've got an event coming up this next Thursday on June 5th, and that's right here at Discount Gun Mart on Marina Boulevard. It starts at 4:45 and it ends at 7 p.m., and that's our handgun safety and fundamentals class. So we do that. It's ladies only, once a month. And if anyone listening has a wife or a sister or daughter or somebody who wants to learn how to shoot and have a good first experience, this is for folks who have never touched a gun all the way up to just wanting to get more confident going to the range on their own. We provide ammunition, we provide the rental firearms, the eye and ear protection, everything that you need to have a good experience. So that's this upcoming Thursday, and you can RSVP or sign up by sending me an email at agag.sdca@gmail.com, and I can send you the RSVP link.
Awesome. Sounds cool. And then finally, Masad Ayub. He came out, what was that, a couple months ago in March, right?
Yeah.
He is returning in September. So it's September 4th and 5th, live fire class at Lemon Grove Rod and Gun Club. If you missed it last time, we got a lot of people who said, hey, there wasn't enough room and we really wanted to take that class. Well, now's your opportunity to take the live fire class on September 4th and 5th. September 6th and 7th is the classroom lecture here in San Diego. Yet to be determined exactly which location it's going to be. The live fire class is $720. The classroom lecture is $500 for both days. We'll also have a dinner on September 3rd. Details will be announced, but we want you to mark your calendar. Tickets will be released to the general public on June 13th, so that's in just about 2 weeks. The Pew Pew crew members will get early bird registration. Yet another perk in becoming a Pew Pew crew member. So there you go. The return of Masada Ayub. Everybody loved it. He did a fantastic job. The guy is a walking legend when it comes to firearms. He is extremely knowledgeable, and I don't know anybody that took that class and didn't get something out of it significantly, impactful on their shooting or self-defense. And everybody talks about the guy. Nobody knows who he is. Maybe we should interview him. But everybody talks about the guy who came in first, and they just refer to him as the kilt guy. Apparently, the guy who took first in the class. I think is that
Brian?
Brian, yeah.
Brian, yeah. Brian's a great guy.
Yeah, so he got well known for his shooting and his kilt.
Yes, yep.
So congratulations, Brian. Sounds like you don't have to take the class again.
He and I just took a class together like 2 weeks ago.
Was he in a kilt?
Yeah. He's always in a kilt, I think. I think at least when he's shooting. I only ever see him shooting, but he's always in a kilt when I see him.
Very nice. Well, and I think he aced the test, whatever the competition was, right?
Nice.
It was I think he got he was perfect score. Yeah,
wow.
Perfect at a Masada U class where, I've seen some good shooters who took that class and, didn't do very well on that test at all, and he aced it. So good for that
That's
dude.
awesome.
Maybe I should get a kilt. I wonder if I ask him, I'm like, Brian, are you that guy that everybody keeps talking about in the class? I wonder if he'd look at me and go, guilty as charged. Okay, we have two really interesting guests to introduce you to. They're from News 2A, and if you're not following News 2A, check them out. We're going to talk to co-founders Grant Kilshevsky and Sean Abramson from News 2A. How are you guys doing?
Yeah,
good to be with you. Thanks for having us.
Good. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining the show. Big thanks to our mutual friend, John Petrolino, the Pen Patriot. Love that guy. He's the absolute best. And he introduced us to you guys, or put us together. He brokered that deal. So big shout out to John Petrolino. You guys work with him. Does he write for News 2A, or what's your relationship with John?
Yep. John was actually our very first supporter. And he was the first person to come out of the woodwork and say, hey, do you guys want me to write a piece for you? And then we just kind of became friends, and he kept writing pieces for us. And to this day, we're good friends. And,
that's awesome.
We just love to push each other.
He's the best. Absolutely love that guy. Had him on the show many times, and I'm so glad that he introduced us to you guys. So talk about the start. When did you guys start? Why did you guys start? And what are you looking to accomplish?
Yep. So we started in. Yep. Yeah. Sorry, we didn't. Excuse me. We didn't pre-rehearse it. So, yeah. Back
right.
In the aftermath of the Bruin ruling, the state wanted to basically invalidate our carry permits. So they said, okay, we're going to issue carry permits, much like they're doing in California.
Yeah.
We're going to issue carry permits, but we're going to change what it means and just make them worthless.
This is the state of New Jersey you're talking about. When you say the state, you're talking about New Jersey did this.
Yes, sorry. Yes, New Jersey. Excuse me. So we started spending some time down in Trenton in the legislature, and just the sheer disdain with which they treat all the public testimony, all common sense, everything was just it was infuriating. And so one day I was just like, hey, Grant, you're into guns. I've got this idea. Should we give it a try? And basically that's how it was born. He said yes. And we just write articles constantly, and we've stuck with it for the last two and a half years.
That's awesome. Congratulations, you guys. You guys are doing a great job. And New Jersey, that's funny. What do we have, 50 states? I think, if you include Canada, it's 51, right? but for now it's 50 states, and there's only 6 or 7 or so that are vehemently anti-Second Amendment, and it's, California is kind of the most known for being crazy, but we're not alone anymore. There's California, and Hawaii's not good, and Washington and Oregon are not good, but New Jersey is definitely, you guys are jockeying for first place when it comes to being anti-Second Amendment. I mean, New Jersey's horrible. I've heard some true horror stories coming out of New Jersey. People, I remember one lady took a wrong turn and went over a bridge and ended up in New Jersey, and even though she was carrying a licensed firearm that was totally legal, and she was doing everything, on the up and up, and she still got busted for it. And I think there was another story out of New Jersey where a guy was on a flight. He had a layover in New Jersey, and he was carrying completely and totally legally, in his luggage, and he got busted for that. It's horrible. I mean, California, like I said, you guys are jockeying for number one when it comes to Second Amendment. What do you guys think about all that? Why is New Jersey so vehemently anti-gun?
So New Jersey's always been anti-gun, just because it's had a heavy Democrat control for quite a while. But New Jersey is just the template. Look, these other states you mentioned, they're following the same template, right? California, Illinois, New York, and it was all a post-Bruin response. They were like children kicking and screaming. Well, we'll give you a permit, and a permit to carry nowhere. And so News 2A was born based off the confusion that comes out of states like New Jersey and California. One day you're a law-abiding citizen, the next day you're a felon, because they're constantly changing the rules, or as the court case progresses and you have an injunction or something like that, it changes the law. So we were born out of necessity because people were looking for reliable sources to try to understand how the changing laws impact them, and who has time to read a 64-page court document. Very few people are lawyers. So what we do and what we excel at is taking complex legal information and distilling it into layman's terms. And although we started in New Jersey, we now cover national Second Amendment news. We've reported on numerous things developing in California there, which are in some ways following the template of New Jersey, and in other ways you're setting your own standards with some pretty crazy anti-gun laws.
Yeah. It is crazy. Now, okay, so you guys have something real over here in California. Dakota and I got to put up with SB2, which exactly like you're describing. In the wake of Bruin, the legislature out here in California said, okay, fine. If we have to issue, then we won't be able to carry anywhere. And they listed, 20 different areas or something
sensitive
like that.
places, like parking lots were included of some businesses and, crazy things. You're like, how could this ever be considered a sensitive place?
Yeah, it's basically everywhere outside of your home. I mean, really, truly. They tried to describe every possible place you could go outside of your home. That was now considered a place where you couldn't carry. So talk about, is it similar? Have you looked at SB2 compared to New Jersey's law, or talk a little bit about New Jersey's law and what they did? And it sounds like you guys are making some progress over there.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to say we're making progress, but it's been, the last count was 580 some days, I believe. Sean, correct me if I have the number wrong, since oral arguments in the combined Siegel-Coons v. Platkin case, which was our New Jersey carry killer bill. 580 some days since oral arguments just in the preliminary injunction. That has to be some kind of record. So basically, we challenged the law. There was a preliminary injunction. It allowed us to carry in some places, not others, which are still under being contested. But I mean, that's a massive amount of time to not have any development. And we're talking to some inside sources who are suggesting that there's going to be a challenge to that delay.
A challenge to the actual delay. And I got to tell you, man, that's the issue. Gun Owners Radio, we work tightly with a couple of different gun organizations, San Diego County Gun Owners and Orange County Gun Owners, Inland Empire Gun Owners. And their whole thing is, activism, getting people elected. Lawsuits are extremely important, and we're in a bunch of lawsuits here in California. But man, people think that lawsuits are a better solution than they are, maybe is the best way to put it. Lawsuits are first off a crapshoot. you may or may not win. I mean, really, truly, even in the best case scenario, you may not win on some technicality or, whatever. The judge is having a bad day, your attorney's having a bad day. So they're not as guaranteed maybe as people think that they are. But the other thing is they're expensive and take a ton of time. They take a ton of time. People come to me all the time and say, hey, why don't we file a lawsuit for XYZ issue? And I say, okay, great. I need $500,000 in 10 years.
Right.
So give me both of those and we'll file every lawsuit you've ever wanted, for each.
Wouldn't it? And the entire time that you're in a lawsuit, you're basically, your rights are already being infringed, right? So
Yeah.
wouldn't it be better to stop these bills before they became law?
Yeah, it is. I mean, but I mean, they're both necessary. They're both important. The cool thing about a lawsuit is once you win, you win. Whereas getting people elected, you got to win every 2 years. But it does take a really long time. So, how much do you know about the possible challenge to the amount of time it's taking?
We don't know much at all. It's just an inside tip, and there's really not much to report on it yet. I don't think anything's been filed.
Okay, and I was looking. You guys, it sounds like you guys are going to get a new author, a new contributor to your site too. Do you want to talk about that, or is it too early to talk about?
So we were recently honored to publish a first piece from Mark Smith of the Four Boxes Diner.
Nice.
We don't know. I mean, it was great because we depend on his legal analysis for so much of what we do.
Yeah.
And he's so knowledgeable and an expert. And so we don't know exactly if he's going to write more for us or not. We hope so, but most of the work that's done for our site, it's pro bono. So we have to depend on the goodness of, people in the Second Amendment community to donate their time, basically. So, but it was great. We're so happy to feature a Mark Smith piece, and all we had to do was ask.
Yeah, he's the best, and his debut article was Congress should remove suppressors from the NFA, which is an important and hot topic right now. And he's great. I mean, the guy, he's kind of the best of both. You get people that are really highly educated. They know every in and out, every nut and bolt when it comes to legalities, lawsuits, whatever, gun issues. And then people who are, or you have people that are really, really, they're just really good at explaining it. They have a lot of personality. He's like the best of both worlds. Yeah. He's extremely educated. He's very good at presenting his case.
And what's great about that article is you were talking about this a moment ago, is activism and getting people engaged, right?
Yeah.
That article, I feel, can be used to help reach out to legislators and educate them about why we want to do this. So many legislators have no knowledge of the Second Amendment, very little knowledge of firearms, very little familiarity. Their talking points and their knowledge comes from Democrat talking points and what they see in the movies in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And so we are encouraging people to take that, push it out, send it to their legislators, and he explains in simple bullet point terms why it's reasonable and effective and a smart thing to do to deregulate suppressors, and why it's not a dangerous thing.
Well, congratulations on getting him to write on your platform. I think that's awesome. I'm a little embarrassed to tell you. I've only known about Mark for less than a year. When was GRPC here? Was that last September?
Yeah, September.
So I went to GRPC, right?
Yeah.
I went to GRPC. It was here in San Diego, and it was wonderful, and it was my first one. And Friday was like media day, or I forget what they call it.
AmCon.
Yeah, AmCon, which was really very cool. And they gave him a big speech on the main day, but they gave him like 15 minutes on Friday. And I'm going, who's this guy? This was he was like the best 15 minutes of the whole weekend. I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't know who he was until September.
Yeah.
And I was blown away. I went up and talked to him afterward. He made this really, really great point when he was talking, Mark Smith. He said, the right or Republicans focus on all these different issues, and they completely ignore the fact that the only issue that they seem to embrace, where they've actually made inroads, where they've actually had success, is Second Amendment. and they're afraid to talk about it. If you look at all their other hot button issues, they have these major losses, and things are getting a little better now because Trump was elected and the administration is actually moving some things forward. But he made the point that they should be concentrating on where they're winning, which is the Second Amendment, and they're just not talking about it enough. Now, again, a lot of this has changed since September. I mean, the guys, I guess he's a problem. I guess they were there. I guess the Trump administration heard Mark's speech and said, hey, we better do this. But I thought, oh, my God, it was such a good point, but it was so well phrased that it made all the difference. And it was kind of something like, it was one of those deals where everybody kind of knows that, but the way he phrased it and explained it and presented it, it kind of made it like a no-brainer. Like, oh yeah, this guy's right. They totally nailed it. So that's awesome that he contributed to your platform there.
Yeah, Mark's a great communicator, and with regard to some of those Second Amendment wins, we've been tracking those. I know this is something we talked about before the show, the new Justice Department under Pam Bondi, and so we created what we just call colloquially the Pam Bondi action tracker. But basically it's everything that the Justice Department under Pam Bondi has done with regard to the Second Amendment. It's all in one timeline anybody can use at news2a.com, and it's a simple thumbs up or a thumbs down on the action, and a quick analysis of how we view it fitting into those things. But that's something Sean did a really, really good job of creating and making easy to use.
And there's even a timeline, right? I'm looking at a timeline, like on this day,
Yeah. So if you go to the upper left-hand menu, Second Amendment News, there's a drop-down.
Gotcha. That's amazing.
Pam Bondi action tracker right there in the lower left.
Now, did you do this? I'm still skeptical of Pam Bondi. I was skeptical back in the day when she was nominated, when they brought her on board with the Trump administration. I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm still skeptical. The DOJ in general has definitely said a lot of the right things. They've done many of the right things. I'm still skeptical of her. I feel like she's an ally because everyone around her is an ally. And she's kind of,
maybe it's not her own personally held belief system, but it's what she's being asked to do, so she's doing it, kind of thing.
I think if there were five people around her were different, then our experience with Trump's DOJ and the Second Amendment would be different. And you know what I mean? It's not her. It's like 5 people around her. I'm making that number up, but you know what I mean? She's surrounded by people that are going, hey, we got to concentrate on the Second Amendment. But if it were just left up to her, I don't know if we'd have the success we have. So is that skepticism I'm not alone. I'm not the only guy. Is that where this came from, or what was the thought behind the Pam Bondi tracker?
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of where it came from, because there was a lot of pushback when she was proposed to potentially be the Attorney General. There was a lot of rumbling online and a lot of people calling her out for all of the things that she's done in the past. So Grant and I, we've been just keeping a close eye on her. And then we're just like, gee, everybody keeps talking about her. And nobody's maintaining an actual list of all the things that are happening under her leadership. So this might be interesting and useful for people. And we just came with the idea and put it up. And it's one of the most visited places on the site.
How hard is it to be? I mean, you guys are, for all intents and purposes, you're journalists, but you have a clearly clearly stated bias, and how do you work with that? You know what I mean? Like you're a journalist with a bias. So how does that bias work into journalism? How do you keep it unbiased when you have a clear bias? You know what I mean?
That's a really good question, and I'm gonna throw it to Sean in a second here, because it's actually a discussion we've had. Twitter, first of all, has become an awesome platform for journalists, right? It's given us a place to live, a place to promote and push our content. And without Twitter and the free speech that Elon Musk has opened up there, who knows if we even have a platform. So we're balancing objectivity with in defense of our constitutional rights as well, both First Amendment and Second Amendment. And so we just try to make a distinction between our reporting when it comes to opinion and when it comes to objective fact-based articles. And of course, you're going to read an article and see that we have a bent towards the Second Amendment, but our impetus there is to make sure we are getting the facts absolutely 100% correct. But I know Sean also has a perspective on it too.
Well, I mean, I think that we're on the side of right, but just something funny that happened early on in the days of News 2A was, I don't remember what article we were publishing or working on, but Grant came to me and he's like, Sean, we're supposed to be unbiased journalists. I'm like, no, we're biased. We are for gun rights. And of course, he's always known we're for gun rights. I don't want that to come out the wrong way, but but he wanted to be more objective. But I was like, no, I mean, no, there is barely any objective news. And even when there is, people don't believe it. Everybody is just completely polarized to one side or the other. But the fact is, the stuff that we publish is on the side of right. We follow the Constitution. We follow the law, we follow court precedent, and that stuff we do very objectively. But when we write our articles, obviously our goal is to promote the Second Amendment. So we do have a bias, but it is an objective interpretation of the law, if that makes any sense.
It is. And Sean, thank you for keeping Grant pro 2A. I'm glad you were there to for that safety net. I think there's an argument to be made that what you guys do and what I've seen of News 2A is the only reason there is a bias is because an anti-bias, such an extreme anti-bias has been created over the last 30, 40 years. So in other words, before this extremism, this anti-gun extremism really took hold and created its own little universe, you guys weren't biased. You were just normal. You were just right down the center saying, hey, this is the reality of life, but because this anti-gun delusion has been created and they come up with these weird, ridiculous stances against reality, the Second Amendment, now all of a sudden it appears that you guys to be more biased than you really truly are. Am I in my own little bubble, and am I the delusional one, or do I have a point there? Tell me I have a point there. Make me feel good.
Isn't it? No, you have a point. Isn't it weird though that we're all collectively in this position where supporting our constitutional rights makes us biased? I mean, how do you wrap your head around that? If that makes me biased, then sure, I'm biased. But take any other civil liberty, take the Fourth Amendment or something. If I was writing in support of that civil liberty, would I also be biased? I think the left has, as they've done with many other political things, they've pushed it so far and so extremely to one side that we now appear to be radical when we haven't moved at all.
Has there been anything that you guys have initiated or reported on or published that you believed in, but it was not well received by the Second Amendment community? In other words, maybe it was kind of, tough love, or, hey, you got to take your medicine here. We were wrong on this or that. Is there anything that's been, you've gotten some major pushback or has been contrary to maybe what the pro-Second Amendment community has thought to be mainstream?
Sean's probably reading my mind on this right now. I'll let him take it.
Kyle Arena.
Say again?
Is it Kyle Arena?
Well, there's been a couple things, and we could probably pivot to that one too. I was thinking NRA, which I know you had wanted to talk about, Mark.
Let's get into NRA.
That's been juicy stuff. We like it.
Let's do that.
But Sean also has a really good point. There is a story there that I'll let him speak to really quickly.
Well, let's start with NRA. Yeah, where did you guys fall on NRA, or what did you guys report with NRA?
Sean, go ahead.
No, Grant, take that one.
All right. So
That's
I
how
think,
controversial it was.
Yeah, neither of them want to say anything.
all right, so here's what happened. We, in this, having the privilege of having this platform, we get to talk to a lot of people, right? And we were just receiving input from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people we talked to, thousands collectively if you count skimming the forums and Reddit and going to the gun range. And so we were just reflecting what we were hearing from people about the NRA. This is prior to the recent elections and NRA 2.0, as you know. And the criticisms were, we thought, well warranted. People were sort of frustrated with an organization that was hadn't evolved, didn't appear to be as active in lawsuits. Maybe had some issues with finances and credibility, all the things you know. And so we published some of those things as objectively as possible. We got some pushback from within the community. And frankly, I feel we've been vindicated. I mean, we just had an awesome interview with Jeff Knox and one before that with John Comerford, who basically have come out and said, yeah, we realize the NRA had a reputation problem and we're working on it. And that's why there's reform candidates. That's why they exist. And that's why NRA 2.0 is here. So it took a year, but from our perspective anyway, that reporting was vindicated. Have you seen something different on your side?
No, not at all. So just to be clear, so you guys said, hey, NRA is doing some questionable things. There's some criticism to be, heaped onto the NRA. I don't know if heaped is a word. Let's go with it. But there's some NRAs deserve some criticism, and you guys said, hey, here's some criticism that's being said about NRA. And the general population, the 2A population, pushed back against that and said, hey, stop criticizing the NRA?
There were some specific influential people who didn't receive that well and reached out to us through some back channels. And I think most of the general population probably agreed with us, but on the inside, we got some pushback.
Let me tell you something, and this is going to, I don't know how it's going to sound, but in my time doing this, if you get pushback from very specific influential people, triple down. That's how you know you're doing something right. When when very specific influential people back channel you and tell you, gee, golly gosh, that might not be a great idea. That's how you know it's a great idea. And you triple down on it and you shove it right in their fucking face. That's what you do. That's exactly. So sounds like what
you've got the experience to speak to that. Well received. We'll keep that in mind going forward. Thank you.
So, okay. So NRA, I got to tell you, I was skeptical when things started coming out. I remember we interviewed Rob Pincus, and I'm like, Rob, what are you doing? With the NRA, knock it off. How is this productive? And we didn't get, he pushed back and he made some great points, and then some other people were like, yeah, this is looking bad. And then I remember when Chris Cox left, I was like, okay, this is something real is going on here, and I kind of shut up. And the NRA has directly attacked me personally, like Michael Schwartz in San Diego. And so and even then I was like, hey, we should still, defend them against, I was wrong. I'm hat in hand. I was wrong. I am sorry. Forgive me for being wrong. There clearly were some issues that needed to get cleaned up. Now, that being said, and I don't know, maybe I'm just a glass is half full guy, but I love NRA 2.0. And I felt like I was kind of skeptical of that. And I've talked to Doug Hamlin a lot. I've talked to a lot of the new board members. Gun Owners Radio endorsed a lot of the new board members and said, hey, vote for these guys. So I'm pretty excited about NRA 2.0, but I also have a track record of being wrong about NRA. So I don't know. What do you guys have thoughts on what's happened and what's going on and things going forward?
I mean, from what we can tell, and I've met quite a few people that are with the NRA, board members, John Comerford, and a bunch of others, and they just seem really sincere about turning over a new leaf, owning the past, and regaining the trust of people that are current members, like myself. I'm a life member, or those who chose to leave, because it's a hard sell to bring some of them back. And so the word needs to get out that they're doing things different. They're going to work with other groups that are also bringing lawsuits. So that's actually really huge to see.
Yeah.
So I mean, it just sincerely seems like they've turned a new leaf. They've also been silently behind a lot of the cases that have been out there as well. Their name hasn't necessarily been on the docket, but they may have financed it or been involved in other ways. So,
well, if there's so much to talk about, let's touch on. You guys brought up Kyle Arena. Touch on that. Give us a little. Bring us up to date on that. The sad case of Kyle Arena.
Yeah, this one's interesting. I'm
Yep.
excited to hear
That
your
was a
thoughts.
That was a controversial one. So
Yeah.
there was this guy that I don't know him. I don't think Grant knows him, but a lot of people in North Jersey from all the different gun groups, they know him.
Mm-hmm.
And he would go on to, Facebook and post a lot of controversial stuff. And some person anonymously filed, it was a red flag.
Yeah.
An anonymous red flag report via email. We don't even know who the person is. They never revealed their identity. And so the police just went into his house. They seized all of those firearms. He was villainized in the media, and turned out that all of his firearms, I believe they were all Jersey legal, but in the media, they're just like assault weapons and they're illegal and this, that, and the other thing. I think he did have some high cap mags. Should do air quotes with that, high cap standard capacity mags. And so we put out this article written by Joe Laporto, and it basically said, okay, this guy was basically a jackass, but he still had the right to post the things that he was posting. And so we put this article out, and it brought an absolute ton of traffic, probably our most read article of all time. And depending on where we would post the article up, some people would be like, gee, the guy seems like a jackass, but it's his right to do these postings. And then others would just crucify us. And these are people who claim to be strong 2A supporters. They're coming out and saying, I support red flag laws, and this guy gets what he deserves. So it was just very controversial because it was a strong sentiment on one side or the other. The guy's either, a piece of, what, or, he had the right and maybe he shouldn't do these things, but he doesn't deserve to be red flagged over it.
What can you think of I'm putting you on the spot. You don't have material in front of you, but can you think of an example? Like what are some of his most offensive Facebook posts that would, necessitate a gun violence restraining order? Like what's like the worst the guy posted?
So if you can put that article back up and just scroll down a little bit, there's a picture in there of a hand. You can't even identify that it's him. The person said that he's pointing that gun at the car. I guess if you look at the photo, you could think maybe it does, but if you actually look, it's way off to the side. He was just basically, from what I could tell, he was basically trying to say, here's my carry piece. He wasn't probably pointing it at the car. That would be incredibly stupid and dangerous. But just based on that, there's no face, there's no identifying marks. It's just a firearm and a hand. And that was enough to get him red flagged.
That's ridiculous. I mean, dumb picture.
Yes.
That's a dumb picture.
Sure.
I think we can all agree. There were some other things too. I think there was a photo, which maybe they've said is photoshopped, I don't know, but of him holding a gun with a red dot optic on it and pointing it at his girlfriend, like the red dots on her forehead.
Yes.
But again, do we think that this was smart behavior? No. But do we know for sure that it wasn't photoshopped? Do we know for sure that it's actually, a crime? I don't know. I don't know if you could say that that's a crime.
If his girlfriend filed the gun violence restraining order and said, this picture is now evidence, but yeah, I agree. There's not, some stranger is clearly just, this was, and this is one of the big problems of gun violence restraining orders. Is this person was not using it because they felt like something bad or unsafe or illegal was happening. There was no absence of law. Therefore, this gun violence restraining order acted as a as a safety net to prevent a, mass shooting.
Right. Like,
It
I don't
wasn't
think
that.
there's any evidence that he was going to go kill people, right? Like, I don't think there was any evidence of like a crime that was being planned or in progress or anything like that. I do think kind of my personal opinion on this is like, well, people like this are not benefiting the Second Amendment community.
Right.
They're not doing anything to help. It makes us look bad as a whole, right?
You're
Like,
talking about the guy that posted the picture.
yeah, Kyle Arena himself, like he did a lot of things in the Second Amendment community. I know he was a moderator on some Facebook groups and different things like that. But this type of attention is not the kind of attention we want as a community, right? So it
Correct.
definitely was a hot topic because it made us all look bad. And then if you were on the side of I'm against red flag laws, it made you look like you were in support of Kyle Arena. But you could be against red flag laws and also think the guy's dumb,
Yeah, none of this warrants a red flag. None of this is a figurative red flag. So therefore, a gun violence restraining order shouldn't have happened. If he's pointing a gun at somebody, that's already illegal. So why not just use the law? But the person, none of that was actually happening, right? He was just taking pictures that were.
And if I remember
sporty.
correctly, the red flag report was filed like a year or year and a half after the picture was actually posted online.
Wow, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
San Diego is a hotbed of gun violence restraining orders too. 1/3 of the gun violence restraining orders issued in California. Is it 1/3 or is it higher than that? I think it's something like 1/3 of the gun violence restraining orders issued in California are issued in San Diego County, and we are not 1/3 of the state.
Yeah, it's crazy.
One of the worst I heard was a guy posted a meme on Facebook early morning on Valentine's Day that said Valentine's Day, best massacre ever. Like this dark humor referencing the shootout in the 30s, the St. Valentine's Day massacre. Now, the unfortunate thing is that was the Valentine's Day that the school shooting happened. Was that Uvalde? Is that what it was on that day?
Yeah, that might have been Uvalde.
So his coworkers already didn't like him. And so they, after the fact, after this horrible massacre happened, they reported him, for posting this meme, and it resulted in a gun violence restraining order. He had to go to court. He lost his job, thousands of dollars. It was really, really horrible.
It was Parkland. It
Parkland.
was the Stoneman Douglas one.
So Parkland happened on like 4 or 5 hours after he posted this
Yeah.
meme. I'm pretty sure his meme had nothing to do with that horrific, activity there, that horrific shooting that happened. But wow, that's interesting. So. Definitely a split then. Some people were supportive, and some people weren't, but everybody had a strong opinion, huh? How do you feel about those? It seems like, in a lot of ways, those types of discussions and those types of articles, despite the criticism that you may have received, that seems like that's kind of the point, right? Of putting material out there.
One of the
talking
nice
and
things.
thinking.
Yeah, one of the nice things about it is it generated discussion. So
Yeah.
below our articles, there's an opportunity for people to comment, and it's almost like a discussion thread. And you just saw lots of ideas being thrown back and forth. I don't know how many minds are changed, but there's definitely compelling arguments on each side, and it just points to the fact that in this right that we have carries a lot of gravity and weight with it, and there's always going to be people doing stupid things like you just mentioned. And yet that doesn't mean that they should be punished by laws that are inherently unconstitutional and lack due process. And so bringing light to states like New Jersey and California for these unconstitutional laws will generate the discussions the public needs to have. And then look at Wyoming. I think it was just a couple of weeks ago they basically outlawed red flag laws. So maybe these discussions are having some kind of impact.
I hope so. I got to tell you, I really think, these gun violence restraining orders, these red flag laws are one of the worst. I don't think people realize just how bad they are and how bad they're going to get. It's truly one of the biggest threats to our Second Amendment. Okay, last thing I wanted to talk to you guys. There's so much to talk to you guys about. We could seriously talk forever on a lot of these things, but I want to make sure people get a real good taste of you guys and. Subscribe and check you guys out. But the last question I wanted to ask you about was the infringement report, which I love. It's essentially a name and shame of police departments that take longer than they should to issue carry permits, right? Is that the idea?
Yep.
Yeah, any kind of infringement. Go ahead, Sean.
Yep, that's exactly right. So pretty much any sort of infringement by government, but in this case, it's been so far police departments, because in New Jersey, it's the police departments that actually issue firearms ID card. That's just basically your permit to possess and purchase long guns, and then you have the pistol purchase permit, and then you have the carry permit. They all go through the police stations, and the law spells out how much time that they're allowed to take to issue each permit, but there's zero accountability. So, for example, a carry permit, the law might say 90 days, but there's jurisdictions that have gone beyond a year. One of our articles here was about the Wayne Police Department, and they were taking 9 months. And I forget if it was a carry permit or a pistol purchase permit, but either way, it's unacceptable and there's no excuse for it. So, and I should also mention, this was John Petrolino's brainchild.
Petrolino.
Yep.
Gabagoo Patriot. I love that.
Exactly. So we always reach out to the mayor, the chief of police, and any other relevant, the permitting officer, any other relevant entities, because we want to, our goal is not to smear any particular person or agency. We want to give them a chance to tell their side of the story, because every story does have two sides. In the two that we've done so far, nobody's responded. I do know that they've actually seen the articles, because I've actually, as soon as I've emailed them links, I said, I know you guys didn't respond, but here's a link to the story. You could actually see somebody from the town that you just emailed is on the site. So in this case, in Wayne, they were taking 9 months to issue permits. So we reached out to everybody involved 2 or 3 times. Nobody responded. And so we went ahead and published the article. And then 2 days later, 2 business days later, the guy had his permit. So
nice.
Yep. And the same happened with the town of Belleville. It was a very similar situation. So far, I'd say we're going 2 for 2. The only thing I would say is that we wish more people would not be afraid to come and file an infringement report with us, because this is actual accountability. We are actually holding these police departments accountable. Evidence is that people are getting their permits 1 or 2 days after we publish the 2 pieces.
Good for you guys. That's awesome. And is it just New Jersey police departments? Because
we could probably find some here locally for you guys.
California.
We are open. We are open to anybody who's facing an infringement.
Yeah.
But right now, is it just New Jersey? You guys are just New Jersey with the police departments, and you're looking to expand?
Those are the people who've responded, right? But here's the tools we use. We use publicly accessible information. So all of the contact information, we use the forms that the police departments provide to people. We submit OPRA requests. If they don't want to provide them, we use the law
what requests?
Open Public Records Act request. So basically, that's the New Jersey version of FOIA or the California version. So we use every tool at our disposal to objectively track what's going on, and we're not limited to where we're sitting in order to do that. It doesn't matter where we're sitting, but if there's people out there who are experiencing infringements, we're more than happy to take it up.
So in New Jersey, there's specific date requirements, like the government has 60 days or 90 days to issue certain things, and that's like per the law. Is that how you guys are determining what's an actual infringement?
Right. Yeah, Sean can probably speak to that more specifically.
Yeah, it's
I wish we had that written in.
We don't have that in California. We don't have like a law that requires sheriff departments to only take a certain number of days or anything like that. So I guess technically ours wouldn't be considered infringements, even though we find them to be very infringing.
They're infringe adjacent.
Well,
yeah. I mean, any delay is an infringement on your rights. Even 30 days, even a week, it's all an infringement.
Agreed. Okay, that was an awesome conversation about what you guys are doing at News 2A, and I really truly encourage everybody to check out News 2A. That was very, very cool. I think we could probably go on for another couple hours. So we're going to have you guys back on and talk even more about some of this, and maybe go into some more focused subjects and talk about some of the things you guys are working on. This is awesome. Big thank you to Petrolino for putting us in touch. Anything else you guys want to make sure that our audience knows about you, or anything else you want to talk about real quick?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you both for the conversation, for hosting us. News 2A started in New Jersey, but we're national, and we could keep a close eye on California because what happens in California usually spreads to the rest of the nation.
Oh, yeah.
And you can also find us on Twitter or X at Team News 2A. Or is it, I think
News 2A team.
News 2A team. Sorry, News 2A team. And we're on Facebook, Gab, Instagram, and Truth Social as well.
Nice. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you guys
it,
so
gentlemen.
much.
Awesome job. And we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to skip right to Stump My Nephew. Everybody's
Sounds
favorite
good.
segment, Stump My Nephew, with Sam the Gunman. We found out years ago that he's extremely good at gun trivia. So if you send in a trivia question and it is gun related and we use it on the show, we'll give you a hat or a shirt. Or if you stump my nephew, then you get a really cool special prize. But good luck with that. Nobody stumps my nephew.
If I use one of my random YouTube channel handles, can I send in a question? Okay.
Dude, his own grandfather has sent in like 2 questions. I think he stumped him once, and he was all happy and proud about it.
I think I could stump him. I think I have a stumper.
This segment brought to you by seal1.com, seal1.com. Hey, folks, I actually have a quick tip to save you time, money, and headaches at the cleaning bench. Ditch the 3-step system and switch to Seal 1. It's the all-in-one CLP that actually works. Just wipe it on, wipe it off, and you clean and lubricate it in those 2 easy steps. Yep, it's that easy. No greasy mess, no extra bottles. It's a dry lube, so you don't have to leave it sitting there. It doesn't spill all over the place. Wipe it completely off, and you're good to go. One product, one step, total confidence. Seal and the number 1. Try it today. Grab yours now at seal1.com. One and done with Seal 1. And you can also get, this is a very cool product. It's actually a CLP rag, right? You just rub this on your gun, and it cleans and lubricates all in one. It's this really cool rag that comes in this bag. And I'll tell you, the best use for this thing is you leave it in your safe. And then after you put your greasy mitts all over your gun, you wipe it down with this thing, and you don't have to worry about all the acids eating away at the metals and whatnot on your gun. So there you go. Seal 1, one and done. Okay, Sam the Gunman, how you doing, dude? Is he there? Let's talk.
I'm well. How are you guys?
Good. Thank you for being on the show, as always. I don't know. What do you think about I think I like the way this question is worded. I don't know.
Me too.
Yeah, I don't know if it's hard. I don't know if he'll get it. I don't think it's overly hard. I think you'll probably get it, Sam.
I think he'll get it.
But I like the way to everyone take a note. This is how you word a Sam the Gunman, Stump My Nephew question. So go ahead, Dakota.
All right, this one is from Billy D from Valley Center, and he asks, what gun was hardest for right-handed Brits to use during World War II because it would poke them in the belly or chest?
Billy D from Valley Center. Thanks very much for writing in. What World War II British firearm was hardest for right-handed shooters to use because it would poke them in the belly or chest?
Yeah.
Ooh.
See where they're going?
He doesn't say it would poke them in the belly or chest while firing, which I think is an important distinction to make, because what immediately comes to mind is the Sten submachine gun, which has a very distinctive magazine and magazine well protruding from the left side of the gun, which means if you have the thing slung or if you're carrying it across your body, then that would be uncomfortable, to say the least. I don't know. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's there's something about the boys' anti-tank rifle that I don't know. That's uncomfortable, but it's an anti-tank rifle, so you'll get that. But I'm going to go with the Sten because of the magazine well in being in the exact wrong place.
Well, and I think that the choice of the word use, they said, what gun was hardest for right-handed Brits to use during World War II rather than fire or whatever. They just kind of, the overall use for a righty. Anyway, go ahead and read the answer.
Yeah, so the Sten or Sten gun is a British submachine gun chambered in 9x19 millimeter, which was used extensively by British and Commonwealth forces throughout World War II and during the Korean War. The Sten is a select fire blowback operated weapon with a side mounted magazine. As a side note, Sten is an acronym derived from the names of the weapon's chief designers, Major Reginald V. Shepard and Harold J. Turpin, and the EN part is for the Enfield Factory.
So Shepard, Turpin, and Enfield Factory. That's
Yeah.
what makes Sten. That's interesting.
That is interesting.
What do you think about that, Sam? You got it right. What else do you know about the Sten? Anything interesting come to mind?
Yeah, the Sten, I've always thought it's sort of neat, even though it has a weird, awkward look to it. And having handled one, I unfortunately haven't had a chance to fire one, but I've handled one statically. And it is a really uncomfortable firearm to hold. I can tell you that. But what I think is cool about it is that it was designed in a very short time span to be produced under duress. It was designed in the early days of World War II when it was considered to be a very strong possibility that Nazi Germany would actually launch an invasion of Great Britain, of the island on which England is located. And so they thought they would have to fight a very difficult defensive war. And to do that, you need arms that you can produce quickly, cheaply, easily, with minimal equipment, especially equipment that isn't specifically designed for making guns. So it has a tube steel receiver, just, tube stock, and it makes heavy use of stamped sheet metal. Almost the entire thing is made of stamped sheet metal and a couple springs, and that's really about it. There is not a whole lot to that gun. Basically, no considerations were made for practical accuracy, comfort of handling, aesthetics. After the first few prototypes that had slightly better stocks, it was just, what is a gun that fires bullets in a direction that we can make in enormous quantities?
Right.
So it's a cool gun, but the issue of having stuff sticking out of the left side, first of all, on the Sten, the reason they did that was because it was expected that soldiers would need to be able to fire it from a prone position, and the 32 round magazine sticking out from the bottom would have impacted that. So they moved it to the side, causing a variety of other problems.
That's a legit problem. I know that one of the things people have to be trained to not do is rest your AR on the magazine when you're shooting prone. So that's a totally legit problem.
Yeah.
But the issue of stuff sticking out of the left side, making the gun more difficult to use for right-handed shooters, is not like that isn't something that someone just made up or came up with. If you look at the AK family of firearms, you'll notice that it seems like a typical AK AKM. It seems like it's more comfortable for a left-handed shooter to operate than a right-handed shooter, depending on the ejection pattern, of course. But your safety is on the right side. Your charging handle is on the right side. The magazine release is ambidextrous, so that doesn't matter either way. The reason that was done was specifically because a right-handed shooter resting the rifle slung across his body would not have the charging handle sticking out, catching on his web gear, or his web gear messing with the safety and changing the position it was in. That was an important consideration, and early AK prototypes had a charging handle on the left side that was later removed specifically for that reason. Also, part of it was so that the handling of the rifle was more familiar to Soviet soldiers who were comfortable with the manual of arms of a Mosin Nagant or an SKS, which also have the bolt handle or charging handle, respectively, on the right side. And if you look at the old Red Army field manuals, they don't reload with their left hands. They hold the rifle with the left hand and reload with the right hand, which is not considered optimal today, But anyway, that's you didn't ask. My point is,
I did
putting
ask.
stuff
Well, it's
on the
all
left
great.
side of the receiver is a problem
Yeah.
that has been recognized by various countries.
I've actually wondered about putting things, horizontally on firearms. Like, I'm surprised no one came up with in California, because one of the things that turns a semi-automatic rifle into a quote unquote assault weapon in California is the pistol grip. And the way it's defined is that it sticks out below the action. I'm surprised nobody took that pistol grip and turned it like this, so that now you hold the gun this way and pull the trigger that way. It's actually ergonomically not that bad, right? I mean, it's ergonomically might even be a little bit more superior to a pistol grip. But if you're able to have a pistol grip this way, it no longer sticks out beneath the action. It's now, and then boom, you just pull it. I don't know. Maybe it'd be like some kind of electronic press. I don't know how that would work. I'm not that smart. Somebody steal my idea and make me famous, but still poor. You can keep all the money. But I thought that'd be cool. An AR where you actually pull the trigger like that. So,
That would be cool.
I know, right?
How do they
Awesome
define
job.
bottom of the action? Because if you rotate an AR-15, then everything is on the right side. Everything's sticking out of the right side, not the bottom. It's fine.
I know, right?
Don't worry about it.
It's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. I
Crazy.
think we should probably just win in court and then, tell them all to go pound sand.
Well, yeah, it's
That's
all
the
these
goal.
feature lists. Everyone knows these. Even the people pushing for laws that use feature lists understand that the features don't really mean anything. It's just one of those, I know it when I see it, so ban that.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes
Yep.
me unhappy.
Okay, do you have time to hang out with us and talk about a couple other things?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so this segment is our shoot you straight segment. Easy for you to say. No bull, just straight shooting on today's hottest gun and political topics. It's time for the straight shooter segment. This is where we talk about different things that happen locally, nationally, mostly gun related, sometimes politically related, but always interesting and fun. It's our opportunity to talk about some things that are going around, the internet, news sources, maybe some things that you haven't even heard yet. But I wanted to talk about an article that came out. It was actually a notification from the San Diego County Sheriff's. It's a gang-related assault and weapons arrest. Man arrested following gang-related search warrant. This happened early March. At 8:30 p.m., deputies responded to the 300 block of Autumn Drive in the city of San Marcos, which is a little burg in North County that doesn't have a whole lot of crime, for a radio call for someone brandishing a weapon. The preliminary investigation revealed the victim was assaulted by 3 suspects and suffered multiple injuries. The follow-up investigation by the Sheriff's Narcotics and Gangs Division revealed the victim was targeted due to a perceived gang affiliation. A 20-year-old male, he's a Vista resident, was identified as one of the attackers. On May 21st, at about 7:30 p.m., a search warrant was served at a residence in Thibodeau Road in the city of Vista, which is right down the street from San Marcos. That's where all the crime happens. That makes sense. They went to San Marcos, but as a result of the search warrants, an unserialized AR-15 style short-barreled rifle. We actually have a picture of it. Why don't we pull that picture of the stuff that we found? That was found. A handgun. Handgun ammunition was found. High-capacity magazines and clothing used in the crime were located and seized as evidence. The suspect was arrested and booked. Felony charges of assault with a deadly weapon, promoting, assisting a criminal street gang in possession of a short-barreled assault weapon. So why do I want to talk about this? Well, I want to talk about this because this is the typical when it comes to guns in general. Gun crime or crimes with guns, or anytime a gun is involved with a crime, it is typically, or especially anytime there's a death and there's a gun involved, it is typically a criminal hurting another criminal. If you eliminate suicides, then what is left is a criminal doing criminal things to other criminals. And that's exactly what we have here. We have a 20-year-old. Actually, there's an 18-year-old An 18-year-old male San Marcos resident was arrested and booked as well. That 18-year-old would be considered a child if to the anti-gunners. So when they put together their misleading lies and statistics, they would include this 18-year-old gang member as a child. He's one of the children who possessed a firearm or was involved. Meanwhile, this guy's a gang member. He's an adult and a gang member. But the other thing is, what's interesting is the vast majority, in fact, almost all assault weapon charges or short-barreled weapon charges or any kind of weapon charges that depend on the configuration of your weapon, typically they're add-ons. I rarely see like a standalone assault weapon violation, for example. Now, I have seen it. There was one less than a year ago, and it actually didn't end up, going through. It went through court, and the judge kind of, the guy didn't get punished very, very hard on the situation. It was kind of a weird situation. But most often, the assault weapons charge is some kind of add-on. They've done something wrong. They've done some kind of horrible crime, and they figure, hey, we can get this person, 5 more years in jail, 10 more years in jail if we add on this assault weapons, violation. But anyway, I wanted to point that out. Any thoughts on the story?
Clearly, this is impossible. Didn't those criminals know that unserialized firearms are illegal in California?
Yeah, and short-barreled ones, too. Those are illegal.
It's crazy.
Well, they don't, we were talking earlier in the show when we were doing our interview, and they were talking about how many people are suddenly felons. And it is the reality. These gun crimes don't go after felons. They create felons.
Yeah.
People that would not have become a felon otherwise are suddenly, but in this situation, this person already was, had multiple charges. They would have been put in jail. Everything was going the right way. They didn't need the gun charges, but this person is a criminal and doesn't care about gun laws anyway. So it didn't stop them. It certainly didn't prevent a crime, and it didn't do anything to keep anybody safe in any way. Any other thoughts on that story?
No, it's not surprising.
It's not surprising, is it? All right. The IPSC Worlds, the U.S. domination of the world, what do they call it? World Championships? Or?
Yeah. So IPSC is essentially like the worldwide or the national or worldwide version of what we have here in the U.S. of USPSA. So USPSA is like the United States version, United States Practical Shooting Association, and then IPSC is the International Practical Shooting Confederation, I think is what the C stands for. But yeah, they just had their PCC World Shoots, so that was super fun. There were a lot of U.S. teams that did very well and U.S. individual shooters. So PCC is like the pistol carbine, right? So it's chambered in 9mm, kind of looks a little bit like an AR, but it's smaller. It's got like a handgun, look to it with just the longer barrel. But there were men's teams, women's teams, senior teams, super senior teams, junior teams, and then there were a bunch of individual results too. And so I just was looking through the results. I think they just dropped on the 30th of May. And was looking over those results, and I recognize some names, and you guys probably do too.
All right, who you got?
So overall, for the entire competition, if you just look at individual scores, overall, the guy who got 4th place is Kyle Litzy, and he's actually kind of local to Southern California. Well, I actually don't know that that's true. I met him a few years ago at a 3-gun match. He was on my squad, and that was a match in Southern California. So I'm assuming that he lives around here. But I guess it's...
Do you remember going, holy crap, this guy's good?
He was so good, and he was so nice. And I knew he was kind of like a famous competitive shooter.
Yeah.
And so he was super nice to me, very helpful, gave me tips on things. And I was just like, oh, this is a really nice guy. And then I saw like the next year, I think he went to Worlds or something. And I was like, oh, I remember him. But yeah, so he got 4th overall in the whole world.
Congratulations to Kyle. His name's Kyle?
Yeah, Kyle. And
great job.
I want to say there were 800 competitors, something like that. So that's no easy feat. And then 8th was Justine Williams, which I think is maybe the best finish a woman has ever had overall.
Wow.
So she got 8th place overall compared to everybody, even the guys, which is awesome. Her and her sister both kicked butt. So PCC Irons, the first place was a USA guy. PCC Optics for the ladies division was Justine Williams in first, Lena Michalek in second. There was a USA first winner for the optics in the junior category. USA got first in the super junior category. USA got first in the PCC Optics for Grand Senior. That was Jerry Michalek. So USA did pretty well, represented pretty well.
Where was the actual competition?
It was in the Czech Republic.
So the Czech Republic. And it was, again, this is international, people from all over the world.
I think I want to say South African team got first place for ladies seniors, and then the U.S. team got second. And I know a couple of the ladies on the U.S. senior team, so that was fun to see them do so well, finish with second place.
Congratulations, ladies. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's some family teams. The U.S. got third place on the family teams. And then there's a bunch of teams that the U.S. got first or second or third on some of the other categories too. So I was just looking through the list and I was like, wow, we really cleaned house.
Yeah, we did.
Did pretty good.
I got to tell you, there are a few sports. Look, if USA doesn't make it in soccer, okay, fine. Who cares? Soccer's lame. Nobody cares about soccer in the U.S. But like basketball, we better be undefeated. You know what I mean? And shooting, we sure as hell better have the strongest showing in shooting. You know, the USA is for any shooting competition, any international shooting competition. We better be, right up there at the top and clean house like we did.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, there's a lot of other countries that do pretty well, like the.
Wait, don't say it.
Oh, go ahead.
All right. So there's I'm gonna try to, think of it. You got a couple there that did well.
So I'm
gonna try to think of think of a country that you think may have done well in the shooting competitions. I'm going to say...
Or at least that their country won first place in one of the competitions there. Yeah.
I'm going to say... I could go with Mexico because all the drug cartels. I probably wouldn't. No. I'm going to go with Germany. Did Germany do well? Is Germany one of them? Sam, what do you got? You got a country?
Can I name more than one?
Name more than one.
Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, Czech Republic.
Good guesses. You're up there. Germany, the best finish I see for them is 8th place in something. I don't think I see a better finish for Germany. Oh. But I mean, not horrible. Sweden did pretty well. They got they got 4th place, 7th place, and then I want to say they got 3rd in something as well. Did you mention Finland?
No, but that one
right
definitely
in there.
makes
Right in there
enough.
with right in there with those other ones, Sweden and all them. So Finland did pretty well, and then a lot of first place or close to first place finishes for the Philippines.
You know what? There you go, Rich. Huh? We were just talking about Pinays and Pinoys. So
we were.
Congratulations.
That's where Rock Island.
Rock Island, yeah. Rock Island's from the Philippines. So.
Yeah,
they make pretty good 1911s there.
Slovakia did pretty well. Actually, the guy who won first place overall for the whole thing, individual score, was from Slovakia.
I don't know where that is. I don't know where Slovakia. I'm gonna be honest with you. I could sit here and nod my head and be like, "Oh, Slovakia, yeah." I don't know where Slovakia. I think Slovakia is something I've ordered on a Greek menu at some point in my life. I don't know where.
Slovakia is a country in Central Europe.
Of course, Sam knows where Slovakia is.
I was going to say, let's ask
All right,
our
go ahead.
encyclopedia.
Where is Slovakia? Tell us everything you know about Slovakia.
Okay, it used to be, well, we're not supposed to call the Czech Republic that anymore. It's now called Czechia, but they used to be both part of Czechoslovakia. They split off. The languages are mostly mutually intelligible.
There you go.
I like your random facts. Do you know what countries it's bordering? Could you list like every bordering country, or would you need to look at a map?
I can list some of them, not all of them. I'm not that
Let's
good.
hear it.
Yeah.
Okay, Poland.
Heard of it.
Yep.
Romania, Hungary, and Croatia, and Italy.
I mean, wow, that's
that
so
right?
good. Romania is actually not technically touching it. Romania is touching Hungary and Ukraine.
Okay.
But yes, it's Poland, Ukraine, Hungary, Austria, and the Czechia.
Whatever. I'm
You
gonna
did
get
very
it.
well.
I'm good. This afternoon, I'm going to go get a Euro plate, and I'm going to polish it off with some Slovakia dessert. So
Yeah, I couldn't have
There.
named like one country it was touching, so that's
awesome
fun.
job.
But yeah.
All right. What else? Is there anything else you want to talk about as far as the? Gosh, we covered so much.
The world shoots. No, I don't think so. I think that was kind of it. I will just kind of give a call to competition shooting because it's super fun and it's relevant because we were just talking about it. But if anybody is in the Southern California area, there's a lot of different. There's Paula, there's Prado, there's Route 66. There's a lot of different matches. USPSA has handgun classification, so you could do an optic or irons or limited 1911 style. Like there's all sorts of choices for handgun competitions. And then if you are interested in PCC competitions, a lot of those same USPSA matches will have a PCC division that you could compete in. But if you are interested in competing and you have never done it before, easiest way to get started is to watch a couple YouTube videos. You can see literally examples of matches, what kinds of gear you need, all sorts of stuff on YouTube. YouTube University is great. And then if you are thinking about actually signing up, go to Practice Score, make a free account, sign up on there for a match near you, and then reach out to the match director and just let them know you're new. I have yet to hear of somebody letting the match director know they're new and not having a good first experience. People
people
have
love
a
that.
super great time. They want to help new people compete. They'll even put you on a squad with some people who will give you tips and tricks and help you through the stages. So it's super fun. And I mean, I'm not affiliated with any of the clubs or anything. I just think it's super fun and you get a lot better at shooting from thinking on your feet with a gun in your hand. So
There you go. It was really good practice for sure. So,
yeah.
Why don't we do, Sam, if you can stick around for a couple more minutes, let's do just a quick legal update. Not a lot to talk about as far as the legal updates.
No.
We'll talk a little bit about that. But let's see, lawsuits and legal updates. Go for it.
I like it.
Yeah, right.
I like the music.
Intense.
This segment is our legal and legislative segment where we tell you what you need to know from the courts and from the legislators. Remember, we are not lawyers and nothing we say is legal advice. Our sponsor, John Dillon, is a lawyer who has been helping people fight GVROs. Those are gun violence restraining orders and more. If you know somebody that's had their self-defense rights taken away without due process, give John a call. His website is dillonlawgp.com and his phone number is 760-642-7150.
Okay, so in the past we've talked about a couple of different bills and a couple of different lawsuits. Here's what I've decided I'm not going to do. What I'm not going to do is give a brand new update on something that isn't really decided or there's no immediate action to be taken on it, just because it made it out of committee or something like that. I think that's all great information. And there are a lot of great guys that do, give like daily updates and they do a great job, but we're just not really set up to do that. And on our show, it'd become repetitive. But, Guns and Gadgets, Copper Jacket, those guys do a really fantastic job. Mark Smith over on Four Boxes, they do a really fantastic job of like giving up to the minute, like, hey, it just passed out of this committee. Or, hey, this thing was filed, in this lawsuit or whatever. But I do want to bring your attention to a couple of different lawsuits. And if you're ever curious, like, well, hey, what lawsuits are going on? I highly recommend going to Firearms Policy Coalition's website or check out, especially if you're in San Diego or Orange County or Riverside or San Bernardino, go to sdcgo.org/lawsuits. Or if you're in Orange County, go to ocgunowners.com/lawsuits, or Inland Empire, same /lawsuits, and it'll bring up all the lawsuits that we're working on. And of course, we partner with Firearms Policy Coalition on just about everything. They've been absolutely fantastic to us, and it's been a really great relationship. We do slightly different things, but there's a big overlapping circle, and that's lawsuits. There are two lawsuits. I keep hearing about the underlying issue a lot, and I wanted to make everybody aware of the lawsuits if you're not already. The first, of course, is the roster, the handgun, or the quote-unquote safe handgun roster. And there have been major developments in that in the past year or two, so that you're starting to be able to purchase firearms that are new. They're starting to be able to make their way onto the roster. Good things are happening. It's going in the right direction. I don't know what the future holds, but I wanted to point out a lawsuit that if you're a San Diego County Gun Owners member, you're a plaintiff on this lawsuit, and it is the Renna versus Bonta lawsuit. Renna, R-E-N-N-A. You can check that out by going to our website and see exactly what's going on there. But basically, it's making the case that, hey, I can't get the firearm I need to in order to protect myself. And the lead plaintiff, Lana Renna, who was a neighbor of mine out in Santee, she went on vacation. She was in Pennsylvania. She went into a gun shop and she found a Smith & Wesson EZ, a Smith & Wesson Shield EZ. And she said, hey, you know what? I have medical issues with my hands. My grip strength isn't the best. Therefore, it's really hard for her to rack the slide. Well, that's exactly what a Smith & Wesson Shield EZ is designed to help with. So she found that, hey, I can actually rack this slide. This is something I can actually use for my self-defense. She came back to California and said, Mike, where do I find one of these guns? And found out that you couldn't buy that here. Well, now it's not just a Second Amendment issue. It's like an ADA issue too, right? Here's somebody who has a disability, but she can't purchase the firearm she needs to defend her life. Well, that's a great lawsuit. So we've been working that lawsuit for years, but again, lawsuits take hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they take the better part of a decade to come to a conclusion. So it's making its way, but the important part to know is that the Renna versus Bonta lawsuit, and there are other lawsuits that accompany it, and they're making their way, and they're having a positive effect. There have been additions to the roster thanks to these lawsuits, and again, we don't know what the future is going to hold. I have a feeling that there may be more setbacks in the future, but ultimately we are going to win this thing. But I want you to check out the Renna versus Bonta lawsuit, and let's do our best to get rid of this ridiculous roster. So, what are your thoughts on? I'm sure that the women's group that you run, Girl and a Gun, that the roster is of particular interest to the women in your group.
Yeah, I was going to mention that specifically because it's like, who is the roster really impacting the most? And I think when we look at women wanting to conceal carry, the amount of good concealed carry options that we have here in California are very limited. There's a principle out there where you take it's called the concealment percentage principle, and Tessa Booth kind of popularized this, and it's on the Philster Holsters YouTube channel as well. But Tessa talks about this concept of, hip to hip distance between your hip bones and the ratio of the height of your gun to your hip to hip distance being what makes it easier or difficult to conceal a gun in the appendix position. And so when we take, I've done this with my chapter and lots of shooters, when we take their concealment percentage and we give them an option like a Glock 19, for a lot of girls, that's taking up, 50, 60, 65% of their available concealment space. So when we think about, what guns would be better options for women to conceal, we're looking at things like, slimline Glocks, right? The Glock 43X, the Glock 48. We're looking at, the Shield is okay, but, Shield Plus is a lot better. But we're looking at, Bodyguard, the new Bodyguard 2.0 by Smith & Wesson. That's a really small, fantastic concealable pistol, but it's not on the roster. We can't get it.
And small in the right way.
Right.
Like it's
small
to affect that ratio that you're talking about.
Yes, small in a way that it's easy to conceal, but it's also easy to shoot. And I think so many of the guns that are on the roster that are kind of meeting that small criteria are difficult to shoot, hard, especially for folks who've got hand strength problems, arthritis. The smaller the gun, typically, the more recoil you're going to feel, the harder the trigger press if it's a revolver, right? So you've got all these options out there that are great that you can get in any other state, but you can't get them here. And that really limits the ability for girls to comfortably conceal. And what I see happening a lot in California is that because it's so difficult to find a gun that fits you well, that you can conceal well, you almost, get sucked into this thought that the only way I can carry comfortably is off body. So then you get into the, purse carry,
Which isn't as good
and it's
in
not,
most situations.
yeah, I would say it's not as good, generally speaking. And also, it's not necessary. If you could get a Bodyguard 2.0, or if you could get a, slimline Glock option, I think you could conceal on body just fine, even if you are a slimmer framed person. I carry a SIG 365 XL that I got used, but those are difficult to find.
Yeah.
Now we do have the Sig Rose as an option, but it's got a comp on it. It's not quite the same as far as concealable, but I think the roster is very pointedly affecting women and female shooters, female concealed carriers, more than it is probably anyone else who's got more options as far as size goes.
Well, and it's certainly not affecting criminals.
No.
They don't care if
No.
they have a Gen 3 Glock or a Gen 5 Glock.
Right.
They're just going to, criminals are just going to do criminal stuff. Sam, what's it like living? Now, you live in a state, you've actually worked at a gun shop in a state where they, somewhat respect your freedom. Imagine if, I don't know, like if you walk into a gun shop where you're at, or the gun shop that you used to work at, and they said, okay, starting tomorrow, 80% of the pistols that you sell, you can no longer sell. First off, do you think that 80% number is probably accurate? And second off, what would that do to your customers? What would that, how would your state react to that level of discrimination?
The Commonwealth of Virginia is pretty interesting because it is almost perfectly evenly split between red voters and blue voters. So it's pretty much decided entirely by a very slim margin whenever there's a state level election. But I can tell you that anecdotally, we sold a crap ton of Glock 48s and to a little bit lesser extent 43Xs and P365 family pistols to women because that and it's not like I'm not one of those people who walks into a gun store with my thumbs in my belt going, what's a good gun for a woman? It's whatever fits you, whatever works for you. But women tend to be built a little bit differently from men, and their hands tend to be dimensionally different. And so 48s work really well for them. For older women who, especially ones who have arthritis or other grip strength issues, the Smith & Wesson EZ, we could barely keep those in stock. We would get them a dozen at a time and then blow out of them, before I even had a chance to turn around. So it's ridiculous to have this roster. It's unfair. I know the point of the roster, the way it's built, is as a way to ensure that all handguns sold in California are safe. But I see no evidence. Yeah, that's what they say. But I see no evidence that almost any of the pistols that are not on the roster that are commonly available throughout the United States are unsafe. I will say that there are some handguns on the roster which I think, in my personal professional opinion, are unsafe. Yes. But that's a different discussion.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point, is that if 80% of the guns in the gun shops that you frequent and worked at, 80% of them are considered unsafe by the state of California.
Yeah.
Yet you're seeing no problems. And then you could actually point to some of the pistols that are still on the roster, that can't be replaced by newer versions or more modern, upgrades or whatever. Safer options. I mean, I think that's exactly the point. You're exactly right. You're making the exact point. But anyway, so so I guess, if you value getting rid of this roster, support the organizations that file these lawsuits. Support San Diego County Gun Owners, support Firearms Policy Coalition, support CGF. They're all on there. Second Amendment Foundation's on there as well. Everybody's doing a good job trying to get rid of these rosters. And of course, as Sam and everybody were here pointing out, is the results aren't less crime. The results are that women have fewer options to defend themselves. The results are that there was a government-made black market, and nobody was safer for it. So I wanted to bring that up. That was a good show. Thank you all for attending and listening. Thank you all for your support. The Pew Pew Crew. We've talked a little bit about it. We want to talk a little bit more real quick. It's the Gun Owners Radio membership program. What you get? Well, you get behind-the-scenes content, which is very cool. You get members-only content. You get exclusive perks like we just talked about, where you get front-of-the-line privileges when it comes to seeing a legend like Masada Ayub. But what your membership really does is it helps us grow the show. It helps us grow the Second Amendment movement and get the message that we're putting out there in front of even more eyes. We're fighting to restore and defend your self-defense rights, your Second Amendment rights, and becoming a part of the Pew Pew Crew helps that. So get in now, visit our YouTube channel, and just look for the join button. That's all you got to do. So thank you all so much. Sam, thank you, my friend. Always an excellent job. You nailed it. And we didn't have any of those shenanigans from Barry and El Cajon. We had a nice, straightforward question. And so good job. Thank you, Dakota. Awesome job. Thank you, Rich. The guys from 2A News. Thank you guys so much. Check them out. And then Alicia, just know we're all thinking about you. And we hope you get better soon. And we'll talk to you real quick. So see you guys next week. Gun Owners Radio. We make activism easy.